Здравствуйте, товарищи, and welcome to our Viewer Game of the Year Awards for 2012. And when I asked you guys to stand up and be counted and vote for your favorite games of 2012, you certainly did just that. And I remember when I did this last year, it took me about half an hour and I was able to do it all in a notebook. This time, it took me 3 hours and I had to use an Excel spreadsheet just to keep track of all the numbers. And before we begin, just a quick note on how the numbers were divvied out. Everyone got one vote, and on that vote they could list their top 3 games for 2012. And the top game they listed was given a value of 3 points, the second game a value of 2 points, and the third game was a value of 1 point. Then I added all those points up, and the games with the top 10 highest point values ended up being the top 10 on this list. And with that out of the way, I proudly present to you your Game of the Year Awards for 2012. Coming in at number 10 with 37 points is Planetside 2. And the spot for number 10 was pretty contested, Planetside 2 just beating out Karawa Shoujo and FTL, which both had 35 points apiece. But there's no question that Planetside 2 deserves to be on this list. Like I said in my own Game of the Year Awards, Planetside 2 could very well be a glimpse into the future of first-person shooters. This free-to-play FPS MMO came out near the end of the year last year, and I feel that maybe a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to check it out. Or maybe they passed over it because free-to-play games sometimes have a stigma about them. In any case though, both myself and the people who voted for this game encourage anyone who hasn't had the chance to check out this game to do so, because you've got nothing to lose and a whole lot to gain. Also, Terran Republic for life. Am I right? Yeah, you know I'm right. It's an awfully big jump to number 9, with Borderlands 2 coming in with 68 points. One of the cool things about doing this is it gives me the opportunity to compare how I think about these games in comparison to the viewer base. And I won't lie that I had my own hypotheses about which games would place where on this list. And honestly, both Planetside 2 and Borderlands 2 I thought were going to do better than they did. Because from the people I've talked to, Borderlands 2 is one of those games that just gets a ton of praise. And rightly so, it's a great game. And that always gave me the impression that I liked it less than the majority of people out there. Not so, because it seems that you guys placed it relatively in the same spot as me on my list. So, for once, it seems I line up with the human population. I refuse to acknowledge the fact that there might be a population of humans out there outside my current subscriber base. Oh yeah, maybe I should actually talk about Borderlands 2 instead of statistics of various people's opinions of Borderlands 2 in comparison to my own opinion. It's got lots of guns that go bang bang shooty shooty with a cool cel-shaded art style that lets you blow shit up with your friends. Okay, moving on. Alright, number 8 is Dishonored with 79 points. And I can see why a lot of people love Dishonored. It's a very cool game. I've heard it compared to BioShock often in terms of the choices and freedom that it gives people in gameplay. As well, some call it the spiritual successor to one of my favorite franchises ever, the Thief franchise. All set in a unique steampunk world full of political intrigue and backstabbing. And while I guess it didn't click for me in a lot of ways that it clicked for other people, I can certainly respect Dishonored for a variety of reasons. One of which being is that it's a high-value, original title from an established studio, something that we seem to get less and less of every year. I often argue that games have the most creative talent out of any entertainment medium, and hopefully if we continue to get high-quality, original titles like Dishonored, snobs like me can continue to make that argument. Number 7 is Halo 4 with 83 points. And Halo is one of those games that you can't say anything more that hasn't been said already. The 4th installment in one of the most popular gaming franchises in history, I think came out and blew a lot of us away, because I don't think many of us were expecting it to be as good as it was. And love Halo or hate Halo, I think you have to respect the fact that the developers came out and put their heart and soul into this game. They put a ton of polish and a ton of man hours into it, and it really shows. Yes, they could have just phoned it in and dicked around and made a really crappy game and put the number 4 on the end of it, like some other nameless game franchises have done, for example. Black Ops 2. Excuse me. Anyway, Halo 4 is a great quality game. that honestly makes me excited for the continuation of the franchise. A franchise that only just recently I was ready to put out to pasture. Number 6 is Assassin's Creed 3 with 118 points. And the Assassin's Creed series is one of those series out there that I know a ton of people love. But it's just never quite clicked with me. And I thought that might change with Assassin's Creed 3 because it's set in an interesting period in history, you know, set during the colonial period, and I love the colonial period. It has muskets and I love muskets. They even have naval battles. But again, it just didn't click for me. That's not to say that the merits of the Assassin's Creed series aren't there and that I don't recognize them. So I completely understand why Assassin's Creed is on this list and why it's pretty high up there on this list. Because again, it's a great quality title, it's got great gameplay, it's absolutely gorgeous, pushing the limits of the hardware that we have today. All in all, there's a ton of great things to say about Assassin's Creed, and it's definitely not a game you could knock for someone choosing it as their game of the year. Number 5 is Mass Effect 3 with 141 points, and I loved reading the comments for when people would put Mass Effect 3 as their number 1 game, because a ton of people apologized for putting it as their number 1 game. People were like, look, I know the ending sucked and the DLC wasn't so great, but it's still a great game. And honestly, not putting Stalin Shepard and his epic handlebar mustache in there with the esteemed ranks of Will Wilson was something I took a little bit of flack for. So let me just clarify why Mass Effect 3 didn't make it for me. Because, like I said at the start, it was the impact of these games that made me place them where I did on the list. And then I was thinking about all the epic moments from the Mass Effect series, and then I realized that every single moment that I had thought of was from Mass Effect 1 or 2. I don't really remember a lot of what happened in Mass Effect 3. And I wasn't one of those people that lost their tits over the Mass Effect 3 ending either, and ranted and raved about it for endless hours. So it didn't even have that negative impact for me. Mass Effect 3 is unquestionably a solid game, but I guess that's all it'll ever be to me, is just solid. Not great, not mind-blowing, but solid. But because you guys put Mass Effect 3 as your number 5 game of the year, at least we can give the Shepards out there the send-off that they rightly deserve, and correct the mistake I made in not doing so. Number 4 honestly surprised me, which is Crusader Kings 2, coming in with 203 points. This surprised me because I didn't expect it to come up this high. I expected it to be on the list, but what I didn't expect was for it to not only outstrip my own placing on my list, but to also finish in the bottom 5. And it's rare that the viewers put a Paradox game in a higher position than I do, because I've been accused of being a shill for the studio before. But vindication has arrived. Man, you know the world's a messed up place when you have to feel vindication for declaring a legitimately great game great. What's also crazy is that I thought for a while I might be declaring Crusader Kings 2 the game of the year, because at one point during the vote tally, it was actually leading the pack. So, I guess the lesson here is, don't mess with the Crusader Kings 2 fans, because they come out in full force. Number 3, with 220 points, is Far Cry 3. And I remember when I was playing Halo 4 when it first came out, I was thinking, man, there's no way that any FPS can come out and be better than this game this year. But man, was I wrong, because Far Cry 3 came out and blew a lot of us away. With its open world structure, fantastic gunplay and interesting characters, and a story that actually had themes and character development and all these other things that are so often missing in first-person shooter storylines. And not to mention, a really killer soundtrack. Far Cry 3 came out and surpassed all our expectations. You know, did I ever tell you guys the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Well, Far Cry 3 certainly breaks that insanity cycle by delivering to us something new and interesting in the first-person shooter genre. And with that, we give Far Cry 3 2 thumbs up and solidify it as the 3rd best viewer game of the year. Hey, did I ever tell you guys the definition of insanity? And just edging out Far Cry 3 by 1 point is XCOM with 221 points. So I mean, really, it's a statistical tie between Far Cry 3 and XCOM. In any case though, this was my most surprising moment, because I thought for sure XCOM would be number 1. when I considered all the glowing praise the game got, the amount of views the Let's Play received, and just the various likes and dislikes that I've come to learn over the years about the viewer base, I thought for sure this was going to be number one. But alas, it was not meant to be, and I'm sure Will Wilson is rolling over in his grave right now. So, I hope you're all proud of yourselves, because I for one am going to play Amazing Grace on a loop while I lay flowers at the shrine I've created in my room to Will Wilson. But really though, XCOM is fantastic. It's one of those unique games that I've never heard anybody say anything bad about. Well, anyone who's sane anyway. And it's absolutely 100% deserving of its number 2 spot. Only thing I could have said? It should have been number 1. Alright, and the Viewer Game of the Year award for 2012 is my beard. Well, it's actually more of a goatee, but just look at that thing. And listen to the critics rave about it. I found the gameplay to be well-rounded and enjoyable, and the graphics and art style were quite appealing. The music hit each mood expertly, and the story was deep and engaging. I put it behind Katawa Shoujo, but in front of The Walking Dead. There is no doubt, when it came to it, this choice was really a no-brainer. Nah, I'm just messing with you, it's The Walking Dead. Coming in at an even 240 points. For a while there, it was quite a horse race for the top spot, which was a nice change of pace from last year, where Skyrim just crushed everything. But eventually it became quite clear that no other game was going to catch up to The Walking Dead, and it was ultimately declared the winner. The Walking Dead is one of those amazing experiences that has struck an accord with just about everybody who's played it. It's one of the few games out there that makes you run pretty much the entire emotional gambit. There will be parts that make you laugh, parts that make you angry, and parts that make you cry. Usually games that win Game of the Year are the games that look pretty and play well, but not this year. This year was really unique. It was a game that moved us. And that's why I think we're all proud to declare The Walking Dead as the Viewer Game of the Year for 2012. And that closes off our Game of the Year awards for 2012. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope you'll stick around with me to enjoy the upcoming games of 2013. And until next time, you guys take care.